Okay, good evening everyone. So I hope you have practiced with the form designs are fine. Queries I hope you have practiced everyone, because queries are the something which will be changing from every project to project. Form design is you have to know all the tags. Once you know all the tags, it is easy. Okay. Now, so last class naga we had started with the concept of procedures, stored procedures concept madidvi, and we had executed a few queries in the stored procedure also. Today's class we will be concentrating on few more small concepts. In this case, in the stored procedure nage stored procedures are in the programmability valaga stored procedures. Open this, and whatever the procedures you have written, those procedures will be here in this case. So today's class we will be concentrating on one more type of stored procedure. I'll just open the existing insert stored procedure, where I am storing the data inside the table TVL MST course. In this case, the same way we had even for MST course we are doing the operation. So now what I want is today I'll create one stored procedure to store the details of the student information I want to store, and immediately it should give me the ID of that particular student in this case. Now if you open this table TVL student, inside this we have columns. In that columns, SID is primary key, that is automatically assigned to the student in this case. Apart from this, we have various other informations that we need to store it inside the table in this. Now what I want is whenever the data is stored inside the stored procedure, after storing the data, immediately it should return me the ID of that particular student in this case. So here it is one insert operation, and second is the select operation, where I need to retrieve the ID of the student in this. So we need to perform two queries at a time. Okay, so for that we make use of the stored procedure. So here let me create a new procedure in this case, and to create a new procedure, it is create procedure followed by the name of the procedure in this. So name of the procedure, I want it as sp underscore ins. Oh, sorry. Okay. So in this I am creating a procedure where I need to store the data of the student in this case. Now here I should store the data of the student, and also after storing, immediately it should retrieve the ID of that particular student in this, because I am not actually entering the ID by myself in the query, so it will be automatically incremented by the software in this case. Hence it should also retrieve the ID of that student and return me the ID in this case. So for that we have to first start with create procedure sp, that is I want to perform insert operation, so I'll use the word ins insert underscore. I want to store it in student details, so I'll put it as student student. After this, what are all the variables that we need to pass? We have to pass those variables along with @ symbol. So when the procedure is asking for the parameters, that is whenever we need to pass the parameters to the procedure in this case, we have to pass it by mentioning a name of one variable. So name of variable I'll give @ student name, and generally we don't prefer using the attribute name here as a variable name. So one change what you can do here is you can call it as p arrow. So p arrow means it is a parameter in this case. So p arrow student name, data type of this is varchar of some 50, and it is always recommended to give same character size what you have given for the column in this case. So varchar of 200 is there, so I put it as 200 separated by comma. Next, second parameter I need to pass the mobile number, p arrow p underscore mobile number. Again this is also of varchar, say size is 15, comma. The third parameter is email ID, so at p underscore email ID varchar of, say for email ID I have passed 100, so I'll give 100 separated by comma. Next is gender I need to pass, so same thing, at p underscore gender, varchar of, say for gender there I have given 15, I will give the same value, comma. Next is address, so same, at p underscore address, varchar of some varchar of address 500, comma. Next after address it is course ID, so it is again at symbol p underscore course ID, data type is int. Next is course ID is over, soft delete, okay, soft delete is at p underscore soft delete, it is also int separated by comma. Created date and created by compulsory, so at p underscore created date, varchar of 50, comma. Next created by, I'll just copy paste it, again it is under 50 varchar in this case. Modified by, deleted date, deleted by, modified reason, deleted, all are allowing null in this case, means you are allowed to enter the null values, and that is not required when I am inserting the data also in this case. Last is a college ID, so again at symbol p underscore college ID int. So I have to mention all the values that I need to give when I am writing the procedure in this case, so parameters that will be passed in this, and then use the as keyword followed by write the insert query now. So it is insert into TBL student, open close bracket, give all the parameters which you are passing in this case, that is student name, comma. When you are inserting here, when you mention the table name, these values whatever you are giving inside the bracket must be the column names in this. So next I am entering the mobile number, next is email ID, comma gender, comma address, comma. Next after address it is course ID, after course ID soft delete, comma. After soft delete it is created date, comma created by, after created by, modified and all are optional, then last is the course ID, COURSE course ID, and then say values, VALUES, and inside this you have to pass these parameters. So it's like P arrow, I have student name, comma. Next it is P arrow, then why it is showing error, course ID, values, P arrow, okay, we missed at symbol, so at symbol P arrow student name, then it is at symbol P arrow mobile number, comma at P arrow email ID, comma at symbol P arrow after email ID it is gender, comma at symbol P arrow after gender we have address, comma again at symbol then we have P arrow, next after address we have is course ID, comma at symbol P arrow soft delete, comma at P arrow you have created date, here you created date, comma, at symbol p arrow, you have created by, comma, last one at p arrow, it is college ID, and put a semicolon in this case. And after storing the data, I need to retrieve the ID of that particular student. So very simple, after you finish the insert query, put a semicolon. Next what I will do is, I will write select, I need the variable name is SID, only one field I need, from TBL student, where when you are retrieving the data, if I just mention select SID from table student, all the data will be displayed. So what I can do is, one option is select max of SID. If you remember, in case of the aggregate functions I had explained one function called as max, which will retrieve you the highest value that is stored that exists in the column. Ega, suppose if I have inserted 7 students data, next 8th student record is inserted, that time max of SID will bring me the ID of the 8th student in this case. So very simple technique is what I am using is, immediately after executing the insert query, I tell him select max SID from TBL student, where of course soft delete equal to 0, and save this. And after that I'll actually end ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದೆ. End is used in Oracle. In Visual Studio, I mean in MS SQL, we make use of the go in this case. So once you put a go, put a semicolon, select the whole query, parse it once, check for if any errors. Yes, because of the go, semicolon is creating the issue, I guess. Select it, execute, yes. Now execute the query. The query is, it is executing the query and it shows error. In set clause, he says we have 2 course IDs. Let me check with that. Select course ID and then it is college ID. Maybe while inserting college ID. Okay, let me check with this. Student name, mobile number, email ID, gender, address, course ID created by. Okay, so here actually instead of college ID, it was course ID, so it was giving the error. Okay, now we have checked it, it is fine. Execute the query and it says command completed successfully. The command is, the stored procedure is created in this case. Now let us insert the data inside this. So I'll just refresh the query once, and now we can see DBO SP underscore insert underscore student query exists. Now we need to execute this query. So to execute, we make use of the exec command followed by the name of the stored procedure, sp underscore ins underscore student, that is sp underscore ins underscore student student, and then pass the parameters in this case. So to pass the parameters, we what in the same order what is given here in this case. ಇದ್ರಾಗ ಏನೇನು ಪ್ಯಾರಾಮೀಟರ್ಸ್ ನೀವು ಯಾವ ಆರ್ಡರ್ನ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿರ್ತೀರಿ ಅದೇ ಆರ್ಡರ್ನಾಗ you have to insert the values in this. So for that, let me minimize this. Okay, so for that the parameters here are first one, that is at p underscore student name equal to, since it is a varchar, put it inside the double quotation. So inside double quotation I will give LOHIT, Lohit, separated by comma. Next parameter I need to enter is mobile number. So at p underscore mobile number is equal to, again it is inside the string, so put it inside double quotation. Next comma, again at p underscore the third parameter is email ID, p underscore email ID equal to, inside single quotation rohit@gmail.com. Next, separated by comma. After that it is gender, so at p underscore gender equal to, say, male, sorry, it is male, separated by comma. Again at p underscore gender is over address equal to, I'll put Bangalore, separated by comma. Next, after address, course ID, so at p underscore course ID. Make sure before inserting the data, the course ID whatever you are entering should be existing there. So I'll take it as 2 comma. Since it is a numeric value, remember course ID is an integer parameter, I am not writing that inside the single quotation. After course ID we have soft delete, so at p underscore soft delete equal to 0 comma. Next is created date, so again at p underscore created date equal to, you can enter that it is in varchar, so I'll create it on the today's date 04042022. and the last, I think created by is there, so at p underscore created by, we will give principal again comma. One more, last one, that is at p underscore college ID. I'll assume that there is a college ID with 2 in the value in this case. So like this, for each stored parameter what you have created, assign the values to be inserted in this. Select the query, just execute once, no problem. Now execute the query and it shows error p course ID which was not supplied, so p underscore course ID, I guess we have given the course ID, yes, p, okay, p is missing here, p underscore course ID. Execute, select, compile it again, no issues, execute. He is executing the query and immediately you can see after executing the query he returned me the value 17, because in that stored procedure we have written 2 queries. First query was to insert the data, that is tblins student. Let me open this, modify. So here we had actually written 2 queries. First query is to insert the data, second query is insert the highest SID in this. So immediately what he does is he will execute the first query and then he executes the second query, and whenever you call this particular stored procedure on the output screen, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡಬಹುದು, immediately he has sent me the highest ID in this case. Of course I need to modify because ಅಲ್ಲಿ no column name ಅಂತ ಬಂದದ, so you can change that no column name by mentioning alias variable like as SID. I'll put one name for that. Select ಮಾಡಿ, execute this because we need to refresh. So the data is inserted, the query is modified. If I execute the same query again, it will execute with same data, of course. Anyway, not an issue. Now he says SID equal to 18. So it is returning me 18. I'll take that value, store it inside the or display it to the user in this. Idi yavag bekagtada, whenever we are giving only the inputs, when we pass the inputs to the user, but we need to store the value, ಅಂದ್ರೆ ID ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಬೇಕಾಗ್ತದೆ. ಸೊ ಅದರ ID ಬೇಕಾದಾಗ ಈ ಟೈಪ್ ಕಾನ್ಸೆಪ್ಟ್ whenever we want, we do this immediate insert as well as the select query in this case. So like this we can execute not only 2 but many as queries at a time inside the stored procedure in this case. So ಈ ರೀತಿಯೊಳಗ we have multiple queries that is generally written inside the queries. As I told you, ಈ insert query ಒಳಗ we have around stored procedures, we have in the live examples we have executed around 24 queries at a time where the data has to be distributed in 24 tables. When you are doing for a college information system naga, sometimes you have to store the data somewhere around 30 tables in this case. Like it depends on different categories of data for the student in this. So such cases we always prefer using the stored procedures to store the data in this case. Yes, any doubts you have till now? Okay. So that is a main concept of the stored procedure what we have in this case. Now we will concentrate on two more important queries in this case. Not queries, we can call it as clauses. That is something called as transactions. Transactions are something like where you want to perform some operations, but there are some measures that we have to take in this case. Like example, sometimes what happens is I have executed one query and later I will find that no, I have to cancel that particular transaction. So such kind of situations can come in your programs in this case. So in such cases we have something called as SQL transactions or these type of commands. They come under the we call it as DCL, data control language. We have seen DML and we have seen DDL. DDL is in create, alter and drop. DML is insert, update, delete and select. The third category of SQL queries comes under the heading called as DCL, that is data control language. So data control language. So under the data control language we have something called as transactions. So using these transactions you can control the execution of the applications. Of course these data control transactions can be used in the stored procedures, but to understand these concepts we will use a normal select query or insert query or delete query. It will be easy for us to understand in this case. Now how do we do it? Very simple. In this data control language transaction concept, we have mainly four types of transactions in this. Four types of transaction commands, which are commit and rollback, we have save point, and we have set transaction. So these are the four commands that we will be concentrating in the data control language in this case. Now what is commit? Now whenever you type anything inside a notepad, if you try to close the application without saving it, it will give you an error message on the screen, or it will give you a warning saying that you have not saved the file. Do you want to save? Yes, no, cancel. Like I'll do it here only. I've typed some data and without saving this I will close the application. He is asking me this is a warning symbol in this case. He is asking new file been modified, save changes, yes, no, cancel. If I click on yes, means that it is whatever the data is there, that will be saved in this case. This yes is nothing but confirmation to save the data. The same way in our SQL transaction, commit is something like save it, confirm it. Or when you have seen KBC, there they say confirm lock kiya jaye. So here also the commit is nothing but it is something like a lock kiya jaye in this. Once you say lock kiya jaye, then whatever the data or whatever the changes you have done in your application is 100% saved without any issues. And once it is saved, it can't be rolled back in this case. Means it can't be reversed. Suppose if I execute a query and immediately the current goes off. There are two queries that I want to execute. Say first is one insert query, second is also one more insert query, and the condition is that if the first query is executed successfully, then only the second query should be executed. That what happens that time is you are executing a query, the first query is executed, but before executing the second query, if the current goes off, what happens here is only one data has been saved inside the table, whereas second data is not stored. So problem what happens here is, the problem is, second time I have to execute only second query, but first query should not be executed. Such thing is not possible, or it is difficult in this. Either both the queries will be executed or none should be executed. So in such cases, when both the queries are executed, we always want to make sure that nothing gets reversed. So for that, we execute a simple query, that is commit. Something like for insert, update and delete, we always make use of the commit function after executing the query. So after I write a insert query, I'll put a commit. After executing the update query, I'll put a commit, and the data gets saved permanently in this case. The second method is rollback. Rollback is an option where you have not executed the query and still you can reverse the transaction. Like example, I have written a query to delete a course. Delete from TBL MST course where course ID equal to 2, semicolon, execute this. Later I will get to know, no, I did this by mistake. Instead of 2, I should have executed I should have deleted the course 22 in this case. Now how to get back the previous executed query? For that, we have an option called as a rollback. When I execute the rollback, immediately whatever the previous query was executed or till where the commit was not executed, that will be returned back in this case. So let us execute these two first, then we'll concentrate on the save point and the set transactions in this. So now let us start with the rollback itself. So here I want to, just a minute, I'll get the data for TBL MST course. Okay, so these are the course details which we have in our database, where 11th ID, that is course ID 11, is AAA, and I want to delete that particular course ID. Now let us execute that. Delete from TBL MST course where course ID equal to say 11. Select it. It's not soft delete, I am executing a hard delete in this case. So query gets executed. So one row affected means now let me execute the same data, same query, select star from, I guess from not required. I have deleted the query 11. So now you can see course ID 11. Now you can see there is no course ID called as 11. And I get to know that it was by mistake I deleted that particular course. I was supposed to delete the course ID 12 in this case. Now how to get back the previous data? Of course, as I told you, sometimes this rollback will bring back the data, but all the data will not be brought back. Okay, for that reason we use a soft delete, which is a very good method in this. Anyway, I want to just execute the rollback query. I'll select this, I'll execute rollback. Transaction has, okay, we don't have a begin transaction in this. We actually forgot to set the transaction here. So once we set the transaction, then only we can get back. Anyway, I'll put a commit. Commit is confirmation of the execution, whatever is the current status of that. Okay, even for that we have to use a begin transaction. We have not used it. So what the begin transaction is nothing but you have to just write one query before performing any these options, that is the rollback and the commit query. In this case, we have to set the transaction. How to set the transaction? It is very simple. You have to use the third part, that is save point. So what I will do now is I will make some changes here. Save point, I will call this as sp1 save point. Okay, probably not supported here. Okay, if it is not supporting here, means we can't execute that in MS SQL. Save transaction. Okay, save transaction sp1 and then delete the query and then commit. Of course we don't have 11 now. I'll go for 12. All the 3 queries selected and execute this. So there is a no active transaction. No, it is not supported here. So can we try it in the stored procedure once? Let me check with direct stored procedure operation here. If it is not there, then okay, it is taken here. Let me insert the data for the course. We have 3 parameters to be passed for the course: exec and the procedure name, whatever the procedure name you have given. It is sp-ins mst course, sp_ins_ course mst course. Okay, I need to pass 3 values in this case. Course name equal to say bbb, just some random values, equal to 0, created by, I'll call admin. Okay, so now let us execute this. Compile, no issues. Execute, no. Corresponding begin transaction. Here also it is the same issue. Let me check with begin transaction query, which is creating more issues. Okay, so I have kept the begin transaction. Execute. Now the data is inserted. That is, you have to just write one command there called as begin transaction. So once I write a begin transaction, use it in the stored procedure itself. So once I set it as begin transaction, the query, whatever the insert operation, update operation, delete operation, whatever, usually we use this begin concept, commit concept, as I told, only for insert, update and delete, because when you are selecting the data, you are not saving anything or modifying anything to the table in this case. So for that the commit is not required for me. But yes, when you are saving, updating, when you are inserting, updating and deleting the data, you are making modification in the table, and in such cases I want the query to be saved successfully, or the transaction should be completed. So for that reason I am using this particular commit in this case. Now second thing is, let me modify it again. Instead of commit, I will make use of rollback and save this query, the stored procedure. Procedure is saved. Let me show you what are the data that we have in the stored procedure, which I have written just now. So when we execute, we have up to 14 IDs in this case. 2 are inserted by the stored procedure, that is BBB. So when I execute the same query third time, means the query to insert the data inside the TBL MST course, it is here. I am trying to insert the BBB, or I'll say I'll insert CCCC, execute the query. One row affected means the data should be saved inside the table. Now let us go to the query window, execute the same query, and point is we don't see any CCCC option in the table in this case. The reason is very simple. I had modified the stored procedure and there I gave rollback after insert query. So whenever we write a rollback after any of the operation, whatever the operations were performed in that particular transaction, that is from where you have written the begin transaction, whatever the queries you have written till the rollback statement, whatever the queries are there that has been executed, means the data was inserted and then the rollback was called, which will reverse the transaction back, means whatever the data you had stored, that data will be deleted from the application, and thus you cannot have the query to be executed in this case. So by this, what happens here is, it is very simple. By this, we sometimes don't want the operation to be performed after completing it. Okay, after the data was inserted, then I get to know, no, I did not want to save this particular query. So in such case, we make use of the rollback operation and we return that to the previous state in this case. So these are three data control language what we have in our SQL in this case. Here of course we tried with one save point. Save point is not being supported in the MS SQL. Probably it is save point. No, we don't have a save point. No, we don't have the save point. Let me try with save transaction. No, I think save transaction is also not supporting in this. Begin transaction, save transaction, SP1. Let me remove this. Okay, so he has taken that back. Okay, save transaction, he is taking this. Okay, I'll explain this particular concept, that is save transaction in this. What exactly is a save transaction? Now let us assume that there are around 3 queries to be executed. So one is some insert into some TBL1, then we have insert into TBL2, insert into some TBL3. So you have 3 different queries to be executed in this case. Now what happens here is, this query gets executed, the data is stored inside the table, this query gets executed, but the query fails, means the query does not execute successfully. In that case, I don't want even the first query to be executed, so I need to return it back to the previous state. So what I will do is, after writing the first query, before writing the first query, I will say save transaction S1. I have a second one, save transaction S2, save transaction S3, save transaction S4. Now sometimes what happens is, after executing all the 3 queries, there should be no error. Suppose if any one of the query has not been executed, okay, like example, the save transaction insert into TBL2 has failed. In that case, I want the previous executions should also be cancelled in this, means I should jump back to this particular save transaction S1, means reverse that particular transaction. So in that case, what I will do is, here I will put rollback S1. So save this. When I say rollback S1, what happens now? After executing the insert query into table 2, transaction is saved. Then I say rollback S1, means whatever the queries you had written before this, all the queries will be cancelled. Means I say whatever the successful query was there, those successful queries will be returned back in this case. Now sir, I don't want the first table insertion, but second table insertion should be cancelled. In that case, we make use of rollback S2. So rollback S2 means till here, whatever the queries were written after this, till the rollback flew, all the queries will be returned back in this case. So here the first query execution was successful, but second query execution will be reversed back in this case. But this concept is not much used here because it is more of the complexity. Like rollback, sometimes we want randomly the rollback should be used in this case. So generally we don't prefer using the transaction save transaction concept, but yes, some very rare options they say it is being used in this, but we have never used a save transaction till now. But commit and rollback is something which we generally use whenever there is a failure of any particular operation. Rollback plays a very important role, and whenever we execute any stored procedure, till now whatever the stored procedures we have used for insert, update and delete, compulsory at the end before terminating the stored procedure, compulsory we must use the commit operation, so that whatever the operations was executed in that particular query will be saved successfully. If out of 9 queries, 8 queries are executed, the 9th query did not execute, maybe because of the power supply or something like that. In that case, the previous 8 queries are automatically rolled back and the data will not be saved. The data will be saved only when you make execution of the commit operation in this case. So I'll change it here. So put it commit. So whenever you are practicing or writing a stored procedures, you must execute the commit in the last part, after inserting, after deleting, after updating or after selecting whatever the queries you have written. At the end, compulsory write the commit operation, so that it is a confirmation from your side to the software saying that yes, execute till here and store everything in this particular query in this case. Okay, so these are the two concepts which I wanted to have in the today's class. So that's it.